Who wants to see another episode of S&S Homestead? Because I do. Well, let's get going. Today, we are going to lay out our pad for the shop. There's several things that I'm going to go through back here that I have to get in order to do this. But primarily what I want to explain is I'm actually moving the location of kind of what I've done already. So I'm going to measure out for the pad of the shop. I left my knife at the truck. How stupid is this? Why would you put a zip tie that tight around these flags? I can't get it off at all. I had a busted up hand, which I can't pull at all. So now I'm literally doing this and trying to push it off, but that is not working either. So, you know what? Let's just measure. Haha! Victorious. All right. I'm gonna start her right here. I'm shifting it all back, and the reason for that is because it gives us a bigger backyard on the house. To my left, which would be, I think you're right in the camera, I don't know, I think it's all mixed up out here. This side is the south side of the property, and it is the high side of the property. So going through this pad development, I'll show you what that means when I say I'm going to pull from the high side to the low side, the material from the high side to the low side. But primarily what I want to do now is walk you guys through all of the tools and equipment that you'll need to do this job. Because let me be very frank, I have never done this. I have never used a rotary laser. I have never graded out a pad. So that just goes to show that if you're willing to be patient, learn, do your research, you can attack something like this. You can do it. You know, if you're building a shop, or if you're just adding on to your house and you need to shoot in grade, I'm going to kind of try to show you how to do that. Even though this is my first time ever using a rotary laser, I have read through the manual, I've watched a bunch of videos on it. So let's get into the tools that we're going to need for this job. What we're going to need is we're going to need a measuring wheel. So what this is essentially just it rolls on the ground and it tells you how many feet and inches you've gone. And then this gets us pretty close, but then to get us a little bit more exact, I've got a measuring tape that I can stake into the ground on an exact point and get us to within, you know, the 1/4 of an inch. Got some string, because then I will stake the corners and I'll pull that string just to get us a nice rectangle shape. And then primarily what we'll be using is this Johnson 9902K 026K rotary self-leveling laser system. So now that I've explained everything that we're gonna need, oh yeah, you're gonna need one of these guys too, right here. Something to move dirt around, because doing this by hand is it ain't gonna work. So get you a tractor, go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards, rent a skid steer if you have to. If you don't want to pay somebody to do it, that's what this is for, is to say, how can I do it myself? So for all of you that love drone shots, which I do, you are about to watch this entire pad transform to a place where a shop will be. So we've got our 4 corners set. You can tell here, there's one right back there, there, and there. So this currently is a 70 by 40 foot long area. So what I'm going to do now is I'm getting the laser set up, and this is the Johnson rotary laser self-leveling. So I'm going to use this to shoot my grade. You can kind of tell in this video it slopes like this a little bit. Again, this is the south side, so this is going to be the high side. This is the low side. So I'm going to get the laser set up, and then I'll tell you how it works. So the way that this functions is you can go horizontal or vertical. I'm going to be going horizontal for shooting grade. And what this does is a little laser in here that rotates like this consistently. There's a high, a medium, and a low. But for right now, what you do is you unlock the pendulum, which allows the laser to rotate, and you turn it on. And you can see in there maybe that it's spinning. And you can't see the laser right now because it is bright. So I'll show you what the other tool comes into play. But right here, you can see that this is self-leveling because clearly this is not perfect. But if I tilt this, you can hear it stop. And then if I put it back, it self-levels within, I think it's 3 degrees. So that's the leveling part of it. And then what you have is called a grading stick, which is right here. And this grading stick has, we get it where you can see it in the shade. So it's got a laser detector on it. And essentially what this does is it allows you, you can't see it with your natural eye. This picks up the laser so that you know, okay, I am in that range of the laser. In theory, what I need to do is take out roughly 7 inches of material from the high side and pull it over here to this side. Flatten it out, compact it, retake my measurements to see if I'm within, pretty good for a sub base. So that's where we're gonna go. Again, remember, I am no expert. This is the first time I've ever shot grade. This is the first time I've ever excavated dirt to create a pad to make it level. I am not a professional, so don't follow me, do whatever you want. But personally, do your research, read your manuals, watch your YouTube videos, and talk to somebody that knows what they're doing. I mean, personally, I have 2 people that are extremely invaluable to me in this, which is my dad, who builds homes, and then my father-in-law, who's also built his home and is extremely handy. So both of them have given me a lot of insight on how to shoot grade and also on just how to do general construction stuff. So new day. I got kind of frustrated last night, I'm not gonna lie. I just new to this, right? So it was the first time I ever set up the laser, first time I was ever trying to read it. I was trying to work with ground that was sloping 2 directions, and I just said, I'm just getting frustrated. I just dropped the bucket on the point where I knew was level and just started digging, started bringing over this dirt. Well, today I decided that instead of just coming out here and digging and moving dirt, I wanted to take the time and actually set square on my pad, but then additionally shoot grade correctly. So I've talked to quite a few people. I've also just, people that I trust that have done this before, and done some research, and basically here's what I've come up with, and I've got it now. It's spot on. So I'm going to show you and try to explain it the best I can, and also just to remind you that, like, hey, sometimes when you're doing stuff, you got to do, for the first time, you got to do it 3 or 4 times to learn it. So I'm in that position. I claimed I'm not a professional, and I'm just trying to show people how, you can do this. You just got to have patience and practice, and you'll get it eventually. So let me kind of explain what's going on. So as you can see, here's my pad. I've got my string line pulled in between my stakes. And this string line is not in any reference to the actual grade yet. That's next. But what I wanted to do was get my building square. So you ask, how do you square a rectangle? Well, you got to understand that it's a trapezoid. So if you were to pull diagonals and just pull your diagonals, you would be out of square, like 3 feet. And I did that like 3 times until my father-in-law and I talked through it, and it was like, okay, this makes sense. Let's do it this way. So what we did was, while we pulled our diagonal, we also pulled our length. And basically, we made those 2 intersect. And where they intersected was right here at 80 foot 7 inches, 80 foot 7.5 inches. Now this is a little bit pulled in just because the stakes is being pulled in by the string. I wanted to keep it taut. So I did that. I pulled from that corner to here, and then my distance or my length from there to here. And I did that on both sides. I know for a fact that this rectangle is now square. So it's a little backwards when you're trying to think about it. It's definitely some construction math. It helps to have a construction calculator, but you can find this calculator online as well. If you look up, you know, what is my diagonal of a 70 by 40 rectangle, it will give you the dimension that your diagonal should be. And then you just pull your tape to that, set your point, and you're good to go. So that took a while to get there. And to be honest, it was kind of frustrating because I was like, man, I know that my front is where I want it, but when I get back to my length, I'm out of square by 3 feet on each side, 2.5 foot, 3 feet. So the most important thing to remember when you're doing this is patience, because it can get frustrating. But also, you know, I wanted to create something that I could visually see, so that it made the idea of envisioning the pad and how much dirt I need to move and that kind of thing a little easier. So the next step is I'm going to set the laser up, and I'm actually going to set my benchmark from the middle stake. And the reason for that is because I've got slope that goes this direction and this direction. So I want to minimize the amount of dirt that I have to pull and move. So doing it in the center is equal parts, right? So if I were to put it on the high side, I would have to move way less, but move it way over here. Versus if I put it on the low side as my benchmark, I'd have to pull more material from the high side to the low side. By setting my benchmark in the middle, I split that. So I'm gonna shoot grade here in a minute, but I wanna explain just one other thing that's important. The string. So the reason I went ahead and pulled the string, even though it has no reference to grade right now, is that it allows me to get straight lines in between each of my corner stakes, and allows me to set a middle point that is spot on in the middle of this rectangle. So what I mean by that is, so you've got a center stake here, and if I pulled taut this string, because I know my corner is set there and I know my corner is set there, this gives me that straight line that I need. Well, then I just measure 20 foot, because remember this is a 40-foot run. If I measure 20 foot off of here and 20 foot off of there, I set my stake right on that 20-foot mark, and it's just right up next to this line. That means that this is almost as spot on in the center as possible. So I took that application and applied it to to all 3 other sides. And then I ran my string in between my sides, which then where the string crosses is going to be your middle point. Right? So if I just take it and bounce it like that, the tension is out of it, right? So it's hitting exactly where the middle point is in this rectangle. I also, when I pulled my diagonals, they crossed at 40 foot 3 inches. 40 foot 3 inches here, 40 foot 3 inches, sorry, this way. So I know that this is pretty spot on center. So you saw me set up the laser a couple days ago. Well, I actually ended up changing the laser position because I came back out here the other day, and I set a benchmark. So I set it in the center of the slab because I've got slopes in 2 directions, and I didn't want to pull a massive amount of dirt from one side to the other, or from the south side to the north side. I wanted it to be more equal parts. So what I did was I set my benchmark in the middle, and here is an explanation of what benchmark means. So let's talk benchmark and our dirt grade for a second. So when I say benchmark, I want you to think of my finished grade. So right here is my dirt pad, 3 inches of gravel, and then 4 inches of concrete gives me my finished grade, or what we're gonna call the benchmark. You'll hear other people call it reference point, whatnot. Benchmark is what we're going with. Okay, so now that you know what benchmark is, what I'm going to show you next is how I did that with the laser itself. So I've got my grading stick here, as well as my receiver, and my receiver is already set at my benchmark. So you can see that right there, BM for benchmark. So if you write on these things with like a pencil, that just comes right off. It's really helpful. So what I'm going to show you now is when I set this the rod on this set screw, it should go as level, meaning the sound will be consistent. Here down, I've got 7 inches, meaning I've got 3 inches for my gravel and 4 inches for my slab. So that's what we're calling our benchmark. So if I were to walk around and leaving my receiver on benchmark, you're not going to necessarily hear any beeps. You might hear some, because that means that that place specifically is level with our benchmark. All right, so now what I'm about to show you is how you actually use this grading rod to determine your slope. So I've got my grade rod here and my receiver, and right now it's set at benchmark, so you're not hearing anything beep. And that is because I am currently lower than my benchmark, right? If I were to raise this up 7 inches, you're gonna start to hear it, because that's about what it is. It's roughly 7 inches from the bottom of the rod to the ground right now. What that tells me, and how you actually use the receiver on the rod, is if I loosen this and I slide it up to my 7-inch mark, which I know is my subgrade level, which is my dirt pad. Right there is my 7-inch mark. So what this position right here is telling me is that technically I need to add a little bit more dirt. You can see as I raise this just a hair, I'm getting that line beep, meaning it's almost to my bench. I'm maybe a 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch more of dirt, and I'm level to my benchmark. Here's the tricky thing about this. So you would think that from my benchmark, as you saw earlier on the rod, I have to go 7 inches down in order to get my subgrade or my dirt pad. But on the rod, I'm actually going to be moving the receiver up. And the reason for that is because I can't go down with the rod into the earth to get the laser to recognize on the sensor at my benchmark. So I have to slide the receiver up in order for it to receive the laser. Always remember, and this is the most important part, it's the thing that everybody gets so confused on. From your benchmark, if you slide your receiver up, it means you're going down in the earth. From your benchmark, if you slide your receiver down, then that means you need to add dirt. It's backwards, right? It is confusing, trust me. You've seen me be confused by it in this video. Just have patience with yourself. So from right here, I'm at -7, meaning if I were to set my bench right here, then this is going to be higher, the ground is going to be lower, the receiver is going to be higher. So you'll see here, I'm going to move up to my southeast corner mark, and it's going to start to beep. Oh, laser's off, sorry. Okay, so I've got a sound right there. I'm going to turn it off. And I'm going to take a measurement from my 7-inch mark. I've already got a line on there, so I'm going to move this so I can see my 7-inch mark. So I know that from my benchmark, I am roughly 9 inches below grade from that benchmark. And I know that I only need to be 7 inches. So in this specific spot, I need to add roughly 2 inches. If I were to come back here to my line that I set already and showed you, you would see that roughly 2 inches needs to get added in order for this to be accurate. So there's a lot of different ways you can do grade. There's a lot of different methods, honestly. I just researched some, and one of the easiest ones that I found was the laser. There is a learning curve, and you know, get people that know what they're doing, talk to them, and then also just string out your pad. Like, get your benchmark set, string it out, and that way you're not constantly having to get off your tractor, go get the laser, that kind of thing. You kind of have a visual of where the dirt should be, and then you can kind of check after you get done. Guys, I gotta tell you something.